Hello, everybody. You know, we're all excited. Everybody? Please. All right, everybody. So we're Team Access Rights, and we've been working on a project this semester that's been focusing on increasing the integration of people with physical disabilities on campus. I'm Angelo.
I'm Shane D.J. Bonner.
Connor.
Ivy.
And this is Team Easy Access.
Yeah.
All right, so when approaching this problem, we had a few different areas around campus that we were looking to really delve into make our main problem space, which were structural, pedagogical, as well as social integration. And well, part of the guiding philosophy that we ended up using in our approach to the problem is outlined in this quote here, which we bolded that it requires intervention to remove environmental and social barriers, not only just initial thoughts about physical accessibility, it's also about the social integration and the way that our culture integrates these individuals within our society. So after doing lots of research with event planners, as well as the student center, professors, and just disabled students in general, we came up with a few insights, which first of all, in terms of university functions like H&D and Bondurant Library, in many instances, they're actually very proactive in terms of trying to accommodate and engage the needs of disabled individuals before a problem actually arises. And then after going through some problem places on campus where there have been complaints about physical accessibility, we figured that it was expensive, difficult, and time-consuming, so it wasn't going to be feasible to try to attack that problem space. And then after kind of looking more into the social integration at many university-sponsored events, such as public parties, college nights, and career fairs, we found that in many instances, even the main entrances were not accessible. And in addition to that, many event organizers on campus don't even think about accessibility in the first place when planning their events. So naturally, there's not going to be a culture where individuals with physical disabilities are going to feel like they're being considered or feeling like the events themselves are just not accessible to them. And then finally, when we finally chose our problem space of the social integration of disabled students at student-planned university events, we chose it partially because it would not be a huge burden, and we saw it as a way to really make a big impact in the culture at Rice.
And to give it a more personal perspective, when I first came to Rice, and especially after O Week, I was really excited to attend, the first public at Martell, Don't Mess with Texas. And so I got myself all ready and I went. But then when I got there, it was incredibly crowded. I couldn't even really get in. It was not accessible, and so I sort of just gave up and didn't really go. And so after that, I talked to several other students with disabilities, and most of them don't even consider the idea of going to a public. They just think that it's not accessible and that it's not even worth trying. And I'm of the opinion that college is much more than just academics. If you're not participating in social life and social events like publics or other social events, then you're not really getting the whole Rice experience, and every student at Rice should get that experience. And so that's the problem we're trying to fix.
Right. So we initially started with the how can we statement at the top. How can we increase accessibility at Rice? But after hearing stories like Shane's, as well as other interviews that we've had with students with disabilities on campus, we came to the realization that a big issue that students with disabilities do face is the social scene here at Rice. The accessibility of social events for students who want to attend, but unfortunately aren't able to. And so we ended up narrowing down our how can we statement to our finalized statement, which is how can we ensure event organizers on Rice's campus accommodate for and make events appealing to students with disabilities. So our user clearly then is event planners. Our user is anybody on campus, whether it's a social or anybody else, who plans events which large numbers of people are expected to attend and have a good time. And so from our user and our understandings and our new how can we statement, our final ideation is an accessibility checklist. So the accessibility checklist is a document that is given to every event organizer on campus by the Rice University Student Center. And these event organizers must complete this checklist before registering their event. Angela is handing out copies of our checklist with all the logistics on it that will shortly be delivered to you. And so our checklist follows, or more so borrows, from the 7 principles of universal design, which are widely recognized as the best metric for accessibility, especially at temporary events like the ones that we're trying to plan and accommodate for. Clearly, we borrow from the principles of universal design, yet our bullets and our requisites are modified and contextualized for like the structural barriers that colleges may face on Rice's campus, considering that it is a historical campus. And so our hope, and according to our testing, what we've seen so far, is that the checklist that we have will ensure the consideration of and the improvement of the experience for all students with disabilities on Rice's campus. So we have design goals, 3 of them, that fit into the awesome acronym of ACE. We want it to be easy to add, comprehend, and execute. So first of all, we want our checklist to be easy to add. And what we mean by this is we want it to be easy to add to the current event planning guidelines that event organizers have to go through. So the current process for registering an event means that event organizers have to contact and maintain contact with the Rice University Student Center, who gives them documents about safety guidelines, about RUPD, about EMS, about alcohol, and a bunch of other things. And so we want it to be easy to add this checklist to the current documents that event organizers are given. Now, what the Rice University Student Center has expressed to us through multiple interviews is that they felt a little uncomfortable saying, like, this event is certifiably accessible according to Rice, because they don't think they have that level of expertise. So we conducted a few interviews with the Disability Support Services Office and their head, Alan Russell, and we understood, or we more so tried to hone in on the logistics of the document itself to make sure that the Student Center could feel comfortable attaching that label to the checklist. And so after meeting with DSS and modifying our checklist, we eventually came to the conclusion that it is deemed certifiably, quote-unquote, accessible according to DSS, and therefore easy to add to current guidelines. Second, we want it to be easy to comprehend. We purposely and strategically avoided a lot of jargon, numbers, and quantifiable things because our interviews with event organizers, they often said that they didn't understand like how many feet the entrance had to be so many feet wide, et cetera, and they said that that kind of intimidated them and made it difficult to implement this checklist. So we purposely made it, as you can see in the checklist, worded in a manner that is easy to understand for the organizers who are using it. And third, we want it to be able to be executed easily. So another thing that we ran into is that a lot of the buildings on Rice's campus are historical buildings, and as a result, they're often just structurally inaccessible. And so we wanted to understand this and contextualize our checklist understanding this. And so we also took steps to make it easier to execute in a structural manner. For example, the Student Center had no way to provide ramps to event organizers who wanted to have ramps yet didn't have any. So being in contact with Kate Abad from the Student Center and continuing that dialogue with them, we've actually started the process of buying a ramp that event organizers can use to make this checklist easier to execute.
So I will talk more about our process of making the checklist. So right now, like prior to our checklist, the event planning checklist for Rice that is made by the Rice University Student Center has a part of that mentions accessibility, but it doesn't offer any guidelines or kind of show the event planners what makes an event accessible. So we really wanted to build off this like for inclusivity, be sure to consider audience, language, accessibility, cultural sensitivity, etc. for the event. But this year I was planning an event. This was not something that was constantly mentioned while we go over a lot of problems. Accessibility was always overlooked as in my perspective as the event planner. So we started off looking at some precedents. Some universities had like guidelines or kind of checklists to make their events accessible, and like also some different organizations. So one of them was Texas State, and we found it on their website, and the other one was like kind of more broad about like giving us resources to start off with this checklist. And as Connor mentioned before, we looked at the ADA requirements to like further understand how circulation works, like what kind of space they need, or also with the ramp, and we were searching what kind of ramp we need, because like it can't be specific to one side. It needs to be like portable and like be able to like attach different places. So we use those guidelines in order to make our checklist.
So we were able to come up with this checklist. As you can see, there's only about like 6 little squares that you have to complete, which adds to how easy we want it to be implemented. So this would be what essentially comes with the form that event planners already have to fill out. One of the main things is that we like account for like technical and logistical items, such as having the main entrance and exits be accessible, and also and then we also wanted to provide a wheelchair ramp in case some of the like entrances are not accessible. In that case, again, as Connor had mentioned, we have talked to Kate, and she said that as long as we send her a link, she'd be willing to buy it for us and put it into that event planning kit. And then also we account for like walkways, how they should be wide enough for wheelchairs to go through and scooters to go through, but we also account for having accommodating for people and being proactive by saying that there should be an additional party space that's like a breathing room so that people have time to just relax for a little bit and like take a step away from the crowded sites. And also at the end, we also said that we wanted to be proactive and show that we care about everyone. And so we asked that they like put this quote that this event is planned with accessibility in mind at the bottom when they're advertising these events. So for testing, we were able to test it at Mid College Night. After talking to the socials, they said that it was pretty easy to follow, and we went and observed, and all of the structures and like activities in place were mostly accessible. Some of the activities, however, required a lot of physical movement and stuff, and so it wasn't accessible in that kind of sense, which made us realize we should also be aware of that. Also, we tried implementing it at Architectonica. Sorry. So sad. Okay. We weren't able to test, but Connor was there and he was there too. And so everything was basically accessible. The only thing that wasn't as clearly accessible was the men's restroom, which was on the 2nd floor. And then one of the event organizers said that with this like a checklist like in mind, they like also told their caregivers to escort students that needed to go to the men's restroom and using the elevator as well.
All right. So after testing our prototype, our main goal was to find a way to pass this project off and see a change made on campus. So after talking to students and determining that our checklist was feasible in their event planning like timelines, we met with DSS to check whether or not the prototype was hitting the right marks. After getting approval from them, our main goal now is to work with student services to incorporate this checklist into the formal event planning and approval process. We have talked to Kate Abad, the Director of Student Services, and have gotten support from her. So our next steps are to ensure proper handoff as quickly as possible. And with that, do you guys have any questions?
It seems like the checklist is focused on place and other events that they're consideration for like non-college events that aren't like politics and others.
Yeah, so it's designed to, I don't know, just make most student-organized events, like be it study breaks or college nights, or just like literally anything that is planned by like a club head or any committee head or something like that. We're trying to keep most of those events.
Like academic things.
Like the most hard ones to tackle is like public parties. That's why I think like testing and like thinking kind of went towards that. But we like it's for all the social events.
So to what extent do you guys plan to make this a requirement versus an additional suggestion on the event planning process?
So the event planning process, basically like you start off like at having like any format you want, like maybe like a Google Doc where you have like explanations like every kind of step. So we wanted to be a part of that. So we want like all of this like people to like consider this. And in our prototype, like obviously there are some places where like if the event organizers cannot make it accessible, we wanted them to like be able to explain themselves or like kind of give out the reason why it's not accessible. So we want it to be a requirement, not like something people would actually work on making it possible, not just like, oh, here's the checklist, you can like look at it. You want them to like, even if they cannot like solve the problem, just state the problem.
Yeah, and that's not to say that if events can't follow this checklist exactly, that they'll be shut down by any means. This is more so like an added benefit to public parties, to social events in general, that event organizers can advertise to the students at Rice, this event is accessible. And the reason we find that so important is because one of our initial problems, as our insights has revealed, was that unfortunately students with disabilities just don't think that accessibility is a consideration in the minds of event planners. And so if a Facebook event where Architectronica says, this event is planned with accessibility in mind, we believe that removes that barrier and makes students with disabilities more able and more willing to attend that event.
What's really exciting about this project to me is that over time, as you start to get those emails that say, okay, I got 5 out of 6 and I didn't get the 6th one because of this, you all can start to build some sort of database of ways that you can combat common issues that people are having. So the ramp is a great idea, and it's one of those things where we still don't know what we don't know. But there are places on campus where I'm sure there's the same issue that a single solution could solve. This is a great way to collect that data.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, we're going to have a 5-minute break so y'all can get more snacks and drinks and things. And we're still encouraging everyone to write feedback for every single thing that presented. You can share them at the end. All right, 5 minutes. Thank you.